Welcome to another development update for Gooey. I was wanting to start making a game as I was heading into Thanksgiving holiday, and immediately I ran into features that I wanted in Gooey because the game, I'm pretty much only interested in making a multiplayer game, and to get into a multiplayer game, you need a login screen. It's kind of where I get hung up on so many other UI frameworks. Is just making a good login flow is surprisingly challenging because users expect a lot out of it. So I tried to make a really good login form here. There's only one misbehavior that I think I can in theory fix, but I've kind of made the basic functionality to the point that I'm really excited about it because it's all just powered by Gooey. So over here we have some validation functions that, like, some of them are just returning a static stir inside of a result for the error. And then down here we have an actual custom error type. And ultimately, all that Gooey needs is something that can check whether or not a value is good and return something that implements display in the error type when it's not good, not valid. So with all that, we can go in here and start seeing how validations work. So one important thing is that, like, by default, you're not presented with a bunch of red, these are technically not valid. So in my previous examples or demos, I had shown that login button was disabled automatically, but in hindsight, that's not actually how it should work, is that you should be able to click login, but instead of logging in, you should then trigger all the validations. So if we go in here and then start, typing in valid input, then we can actually log in. And I forgot to make that centered. Whoops. So we can potentially do that a little bit later when we're actually in the code a bit more. So then the other part that's important to me is that if we start typing some input and click on create account, that input is preserved. There's so many times that I've gone on to different websites and I start typing in something and it's like, oh wait, I don't actually have an account here. And then you click on create account instead and you just lost your input. And it's just really annoying. Or vice versa. You were trying to, you got sent to the create account form and you realized, oh wait, I do have an account. So you click on click on login instead. And even though you had just given it your handle that it complained about was already in use, of course it doesn't, preserve that on the login screen, right? So I've made it so that these things, do, when you set it up the way that Gooey is set up for, will just preserve it across. And the other interesting behavior here is that when you don't have a valid value and you switch between the forms, because you're expressing that you're wanting a different, you're doing something different. I erased the validations. I reset the validations on each of those context switches. And this is a behavior not powered. It's powered by Gooey, but it's a decision I've made in this particular app I'm implementing. So basically, I've just made it so that each time you change one of these, the validations are reset. So we can, trigger them again. So yeah, let me just go ahead and show that as we go through the registration flow, we can see that we get to, so this is the one misbehavior that I'm not super happy with. And I know I can solve it, but it's going to be a little bit more verbose than I would like it to be for an end user to actually solve it. So this is something I may still need to do something in Gooey to help make it easy for end users. So like as I'm implementing my own game, I'm going to be trying to make Gooey as good as possible to make it so that I'm not having to redo a bunch of stuff that's in my game that other users of Gooey may want as well, right? That sort of design philosophy. So really, I'm trying to dog food Gooey with a game, and also build a game by using Gooey. So I don't know. So anyways, if we finally get our matched password, we can register and we can get through. So so then the last fun detail about this form is that by default, the display name shows John Smith capitalized with no hyphen. And that's kind of showing off that if I actually typed in John Smith here, it starts complaining about the space in the middle. And so, you would need to do something like that. And as I'm doing that, the display name's placeholder is updating automatically, which is kind of cool. So, I can come down here and I realized just now that it doesn't actually allow spaces. So I can't actually show off that you could put in John Smith here because it's actually not valid. But that's the goal, is that this is like the @ handle in my game system. And this is kind of the full name, so to speak. But, with full names, you shouldn't, I don't know why I'm trying to switch back to the app. It's like right here. I'm so used to being in full screen mode in my window manager. So like I have some extra validations in here for the display name that is checking to see if it's actually an identifying character by the definition of Unicode, which this isn't maybe perfect classification, but I feel like it's probably good enough for now. So how does this actually work? So this login form is a total of 214 lines of code, including the probably like 10 lines of usings up here. So at the core, we have a choice between login and create account, and that's just an enum. And the key parts here is that the enum needs to implement clone and partial EQ. And if we were to look to see where we start creating it, we have this dynamic new. Dynamic, if you haven't seen any of the previous videos, is basically just a fancy kind of mutex thing that allows you to observe a value and update a value. And so it has different types of combinators that make it easy to build reactive and dependent systems. So what we'll see here is that every time the action is updated, this closure is going to get invoked. And so this is where the validations are getting reset every time we're switching. So that is not showing the validation error until I start typing again. And then the other part we want to look at here is existing account. So basically every time that's updated, we're creating a new dynamic containing the value of whatever this closure produces. So basically, as action is updated, existing account, which is now a bool, will automatically be updated as well, containing the result of this particular closure. So in this case, we're saying it's an existing account we're trying to get into if the action is login. So that's used down below here in a couple of different spots. So let's look at this one first, which is a collapse vertically. Well, what are we collapsing? We're collapsing some rows. And the rows are an and email and display name, it looks like, right? So so these two form fields, when we switch the action to be an existing account, are automatically hiding, and it's just all happening based on this one line right here. That's a cool thing. And then we also have the actual validations to look at. So if we look at our email validation, ultimately we have this validations thing, which I'll talk about in a second, when not existing account. So this validation is only going to affect when we're not an existing account. There's also a when helper for when you want the true situation instead of the false situation. So basically, when we're on the login form, whatever value is in the email field doesn't need to be validated for us to click login. That's what the when not means, is that we only want this validation to be performed, or to matter rather, once existing account is false, which means we're creating an account. I want to make sure I said that correctly. And then our validate email function just simply takes that string and returns, like I said, a result with an error type that implements display, which is static str. And that's that. So what was this validations thing? And then validations also just has a straight up validate without a precondition. So that's the handle is always validated regardless of what field we're on, right? Or what action we're taking. So let's look at what validations is. Validations up here is this validations object. So I'll tell you instead of trying to describe it. But I wanted to show where it was initialized so we can track it, because again, this is where we do the reset, and I kind of glossed over that earlier. So validations allows us to group a bunch of different related validations into one thing, and that one thing is protecting whatever action we're trying to take. So if we go and look to see where else validation is used, we're using it to create all the individual validations. But down here, we have this action caption, which that was another subtle behavior, is that when you're on create account, it says register, and when you're on login, it's login. That's again just another map each that's just looking at that enum state and producing the correct string, no big deal. And we turn that dynamic string into a button, so it becomes the button's label. And into button is something that exists on that make widget thing that is kind of core to everything in Gooey. So basically anything can be a button caption, which is fun. And then we add an on-click handler that uses validations when valid. And what this does is it takes this closure and it wraps it with some extra logic that verifies that all the validations are actually good. and if you haven't actually like, it makes sure that it actually triggers the validations too if they haven't been triggered, and so then it only invokes this closure once all the validations are passing. And because of the whole when not situation, it only takes into account which fields are actually being, are supposed to be considered. So that's kind of a simplified demo of how this all works. I'm really excited with how Gooey is coming together. This feels almost magical. Just how everything is just fitting together and automatically updating, and how little logic I'm having to put together. It's all just the puzzle is less about how to actually build the user interface and more about how to design the data flow through these kind of dynamic and reactive variables. So I'm still learning whether or not this is going to be great to build a big app. You're now looking at literally the most complicated thing I've built with Gooey, but I'm very excited, and we'll see how this game that I'm starting gets developed. So thanks for paying attention, watching. If you want to continue seeing development, check out the repository. I'll put it in the description below. Thank you very much.